Hey everyone, I'm Brett, and welcome to Nightwood Guns. Today we are finally talking about the Johnny GLOCKS trigger. So a little while ago I posted a short saying I was testing out the Johnny GLOCKS trigger, and I posted this short. Now that was a pretty solid build drill run, and it got people's attention, and they wanted to know more about the Johnny GLOCKS trigger, so I decided to do a full review. To my YouTube manual reviewer, this trigger does not make this gun full auto. It is not a binary trigger. It does not change the function of the gun whatsoever. Not that you care. Anytime I talk about a trigger, YouTube typically demonetizes my video, gives me limited ads, and worse off, gives me limited visibility, which means they don't recommend the video to very many people. So if you'd like to offset that because you enjoy the video, feel free to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that thumbs up, like button, and leave a comment down below. I'm pretty good about answering comments. And if you can't think of anything to say in the comments, just leave an emoji. That helps too. And of course, as my subscribers and my patrons know, the links in the description below are the place to be if you'd like to help support the channel. There are links to my books if you're looking for something to read. And of course, there's my Patreon if you'd like to directly support the channel. Now let's talk about the Johnny GLOCKS trigger. So this trigger is the, and I want to get this right, it's the Johnny GLOCKS Evolution X drop-in combat trigger system, which sounds pretty cool. We all know that this industry is full of interesting names, and that doesn't necessarily reflect how cool it actually is.
What if you could carry a gun on you, so hidden, it was like the footsteps of a Navy SEAL?
And there's a slot on the back for you to keep your gun license with your gun.
I don't normally do this. I normally try to hook you with, what do I think of this? But right off the bat, this trigger is absolutely phenomenal, and in my opinion, it's the best Glock trigger on the market. But be sure to stay tuned because I'm going over the Johnny GLOCKS trigger for the full-size offerings and also for the slimline offerings, and I have something different to say about the slimline offerings versus the full-size, so be sure to stick around to find out what I think about the slimline option later in the video. So what I ordered is the combat drop-in system along with the upgrade to the JG Vex trigger shoe and the striker upgrade. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the trigger press. So I'm just gonna take up the little tab here so we can look at the pre-travel, which is right there. It's a very defined and distinct wall. Press through the wall, a nice clean glass rod break, and of course the reset, which is very short and just springs forward. Now this came with two striker springs. I put in the lighter one and it has brought the weight down to about 4 pounds. But more importantly than trigger weight, when I'm looking at a new trigger on a gun, I'm looking at trigger geometry and the travel, over travel, and the reset. So I strongly recommend if you order this trigger to get the Vex trigger shoe for sure. It is a flat, straight trigger with curved edges. And unlike a lot of flat triggers, it's not too far forward. I always struggle a little bit with trigger reach on like an Apex trigger, for example. This one brings it to a point where the trigger reach is absolutely perfect for me, and it's fairly short so I can run it really fast. So the trigger geometry of this Vex trigger shoe is my absolute favorite that I've encountered so far for a striker gun. Now the pre-travel doesn't matter too much to me, but it's hitting this wall and the length of travel it takes to break it, which is pretty short. That I really like. And then of course the very short reset that just springs forward. I even actually overshot the reset a little bit there. But to me, those are the real game changers. You know, I always used to say that the Smith & Wesson M&P was probably the best striker fire option on the market because you could get the Apex trigger for it, and the Apex trigger on the M&P is just a whole other world from their other offerings. It is unlike anything else, and it's the best striker fire trigger on the market. The Johnny GLOCKS trigger on the Glock might be better than that. If it's not better, man, it is just as good. I am blown away. I cannot overstate how incredible this trigger is and how amazingly it shoots. Now, hearing myself say that, I feel like I need to preface this. I have no relationship with Johnny GLOCKS. I paid for this trigger out of my own pocket. I'm just a consumer, just like you, and I am beyond satisfied and in fact impressed, and it exceeded all of my expectations. I liked this trigger so much that I immediately turned around and ordered another one before I even shot this one, just dry firing. I ordered a second one. If that doesn't describe how amazing this trigger is, I don't know what else will. The Johnny GLOCKS combat trigger is going to be the best trigger you can get for self-defense, everyday carry, anything like that. So let's talk about the upgrades and whether or not they're worth it. So if you're gonna buy the drop-in trigger system, I strongly recommend the upgrade to the Vex trigger shoe because man, it is a massive improvement for trigger geometry. As far as the striker upgrade goes, I tried it with and without the upgraded striker, and I can say that the striker upgrade makes the trigger about 3% smoother, but I'm a buy once, cry once kind of guy. If I'm already spending a stupid amount of money on a Glock trigger, then I might as well spend a few extra bucks and make it even stupider to have it the absolute best it could be. But if you're on a budget, I would think that you could probably skip the striker upgrade and still be in really good shape. So the Johnny Glocks triggers for the standard size Glocks, this one's a G45. In the back of the trigger pack here, there is an over travel adjustment screw, so you can tune the trigger to have the reset and travel and where it breaks to meet your exact needs, which is really cool to have that level of adjustability. But just know with that level of adjustability, there is a slight negative, maybe, to be aware of. In my opinion, this trigger requires a break-in period before it's good to go for self-defense. So when you install this trigger, when you're dealing with polymers and plastics and a drop-in kit like this, it takes time for the parts to settle. I took this out to the range and put 250 rounds through it, and the trigger started to get really mushy, and then it started to have a delayed break, and then it got to the point where I would press the trigger all the way, and then it would fire as I started the reset. The reason that happened is because that over travel screw needed to be slightly adjusted after the trigger pack settled. So I would not recommend dropping this into your gun and then you just start carrying it. You're going to have to break this in. For me, it was 250 rounds for all the parts to settle, so you can tune in that over travel screw to get the reset exactly where you want it, and so that the trigger will break exactly where you need it to. So that's just something to be aware of. But since the parts have settled and I tuned it into my needs, it has not moved since and is 100% good to go, and I'm confident in it. So the Johnny Glocks trigger with the trigger shoe upgrade and with the striker upgrade is $370. Wow.
Oh, this place is ugly anyway. You and me, we're family.
Promise never to drift away.
So the question that I'm going to be getting is it worth it? And I will say that that depends on two things. One, your money mindset, and two, what kind of performance you want to get out of your Glock. In my opinion, a stock Glock is 100% good enough. You can run a stock Glock trigger well enough to do just about anything. But when you get a nicer trigger like this, it takes less effort to shoot it well and shoot it fast. You can still shoot a stock Glock that fast with that level of accuracy, but with a nice trigger like this, it takes a little less effort, makes your job as the shooter a little easier. So if you're someone who enjoys nice things and you like Glocks and you want to have the nicest Glock trigger on the market, this is a 100% go. Now, something that you're gonna hear a lot of people say is, oh, you'd be better off spending that money training or spending it on ammo or something like that, which I 100% agree with. That will get you more gains at the range than putting a trigger into your gun. But if you're that person who has already spent that money training and already spent that money putting thousands of rounds of ammo down range, then that's when something like this, tuning up your gun a little bit with the best Glock trigger on the market, can actually make a difference in your performance. A small difference, but albeit if you've plateaued, this can make it a little bit easier for you to hit that next level. But if you're somebody who just carries a stock Glock and trains occasionally, then you're probably good to go with what you have. But I will say that you're not getting ripped off, you're getting what you pay for. It's the best of the best. Now, I mentioned that I had something different to say about the slimline version of the combat drop-in trigger system from Johnny Glocks. And I know this G48 looks absolutely ridiculous, just bear with me, I'm testing shit. So on the standard size Glocks, the triggers are usually pretty good from the factory, especially the reset. You can run those things really well right out of the box. I'd be worried more about putting a dot on there and maybe some grip texture and a weapon light over getting a new trigger in those, but if you already have all those things and you want the best trigger there is, then yeah, of course, Johnny Glocks trigger is the only trigger I would recommend you replace it with. It's the only one where you're gonna see a significant gain over, some other offerings on the market like the Apex. But in my experience, the slim line Glocks typically have extremely heavy triggers. And not only is it heavy, when it breaks, it snaps so hard that if you're looking at your dot, you press the trigger, dry firing, it snaps, and the gun will like recoil. You see your dot move. and that can affect performance. Now granted, slimline Glocks, you might be of the philosophy where, oh, just point and shoot, it's a gut shooting gun, 3 yards, 3 shots. But for me, I like to strive for extreme performance, speed, accuracy, and precision in all of my carry guns, no matter how slimline they may be. That's why I think that the slimline version is actually more worth it than the full-size version. It's a significant improvement. So on the slimline Glock, I actually quickly, just in front of my safe before I swapped out the trigger, took a video of the stock trigger on this 48. Take a look. Now let's take a look at the Johnny Glocks trigger on the G48. So we have the tab, and then the take up to the wall, almost none, that's really short. And the break, very short, crisp, just glass rod snapping break. And then of course the reset, very short, instant, just springs forward. Now this one, I put the lighter striker spring in this one, just like I did with the full size version. This one actually breaks closer to 3.5 pounds. So if that's a little light to your taste, just know that it comes with another heavier striker spring to increase the trigger pull weight for you. And it's still gonna be very crisp, have the excellent travel reset, all of that. Now, another reason that I strongly recommend the slimline version is it actually doesn't have the over travel screw in the back of the trigger pack. There's no room for it in there because it's a slimline. So you don't have to worry about that over travel screw maybe working around or the trigger pack settling and it not breaking properly. They do such a great job tuning these in their shop that this one has been 100% good to go. No fuss, no muss, just plug and play. Now, as far as installing these guys go, I'm not gonna show you how to install it because that's just like an instant death trap on YouTube. It probably doesn't matter, I'm probably gonna get struck anyways. But Johnny Glock's YouTube channel can 100% educationally walk you through the process of this. It's very doable. That's one of the beautiful things about Glocks is they're just so simple to work on. This is almost a no-brainer at home if you follow along with his video. And of course, if you're uncomfortable with it, you can always take it to a gunsmith. So for the bigger Glocks, I absolutely recommend the Johnny Glocks trigger. It is my favorite trigger, the best one. It does not compromise safety. I do recommend it, but you're probably good to go with a stock trigger if you're happy with it. On the other hand, for the slimline, I strongly, very strongly recommend the Johnny Glocks trigger. In my opinion, if I get any more slimline Glocks, it's gonna be an instant upgrade for me. Johnny Glocks is the only aftermarket trigger I will be putting into any of my Glocks moving forward, and it's the only Glock trigger that gets the Nightwood Guns stamp of approval. It is 100% worth it and is 100% good to go. If along our journey you forgot to subscribe, hit the like button, or leave an emoji or a comment down below, now is your opportunity to do so. I hope you enjoyed the video. It was great seeing you guys again, and I'll see you in the next video. I'm Brett, and this was Nightwood Guns. Nightwood out.